Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today is October the 21st. It's been 2 weeks. Well, it will have been 2 weeks since our 14-year-old pup passed away, and we're still kind of devastated by it. I don't know how else to explain it. Basically, in our household, we are comprised of only children, and the dog that we got was basically our first dog, my first pet ever, that I was allowed to keep. One time I had a dog for maybe a day before one of my parents took it away and basically dropped it off in a shopping center's parking lot. I don't know why we didn't go to an animal care place. I'm not sure. But speaking of relatives, I want to tell you today a narrative that I read recently that talks about 7 signs that family members tolerate you but don't actually want to hang out with you. The first sign is that conversations never move past the weather. And what that means is that basically in a lot of cases, we can only have basic conversations. Like for an example, oh, the weather's nice. Oh, it's overcast. Oh, the sky is blue. Not long ago, I shared a clip of me having a conversation with my father. For my father, it was more of a confrontation. And for me, it was more of a learning opportunity where I was attempting to have a conversation. With a lot of my relatives, the same thing has happened where I've attempted to have a full conversation, and basically we get kind of stonewalled. We get to a point where essentially the only thing they do want to talk about is the weather. And if we talk about anything that is, for an example, in the realm of trying to restore our health, to restore our happiness, to rekindle our vigor, the odds are it's going to be sidetracked into a conversation that's basically someone telling me gossip. Like for an example, I was talking with one close relative just the other day, and the only thing that I got out of it was that they didn't hear anything I said. They had just told me they went to a family get-together to which I wasn't invited, and they enjoyed. They didn't really enjoy it. They talked about how far away it was to go to get there, and then they went so far as to tell me a lot of gossip, a lot of things about people in the family, and a lot of basically the news wasn't uplifting, and they didn't themselves sound very happy. And so I was saying, hey, you sound very worn out, and you also, it seems like you could use some help with they're struggling through a recovery phase. And if you remember me on my channel, I've highly what's the word for it, praised the healing experience of going to, for an example, some natural hot springs. That's a place where I would normally want to take someone that was ailing, and at the same time, for whatever reason, to travel that distance is even more unbearable for the person who does not want to, who doesn't want to feel good. When someone doesn't want to feel good, they're going to just kind of perpetuate the misery around them. And the only thing you can actually talk with someone about, just like in the video where I shared a conversation that I was having with my father, is you can only really just have a conversation talking about basic things like the sky is blue, or in this case, the sky is overcast. And even then, the conversation will possibly go astray because, well, people don't want to really be in a room with you if they don't like you. And so tolerating someone versus actually having unconditional love for someone usually means that they're not going to get anything besides the topical. If you give them details, they're not going to care about the details. They won't remember them. And over time, it'll just be something that's another annoyance. So the first sign that someone is just tolerating your presence but doesn't really want you around is that you're only going to have topical conversations such as what the weather is like. The second sign that you are being tolerated by family but not really wanted around is that any news you share will land with a thud. What does that mean? So if, for an example, someone like me says, man, I've been having some difficult times, I'm going through this circumstance, and my animal passed away, my pet, my family member, whatever you would want to call it, whatever has happened. Sorry, but this thing's blocking my view, so I'm having an unusual time getting into my spot here. But if you told someone that you lost one of your favorite pets, or a family member or something like that, the fact is that your news might go unacknowledged. It might be that someone will repeat back some of what you said, to parrot some of the things that you're saying, but they might not actually really care that you're going through a hardship. They'll just go ahead and switch gears and carry on a conversation in a direction that has nothing to do with acknowledging where you are and or nurturing you in a way that is obvious. And in a lot of cases, that's because they have trouble nurturing themselves. So that's the second reason or second sign that family members really just tolerate you but don't really want you around. Anytime you tell them news, it's just going to land with a thud. There's not going to be any kind of inspiration that comes from those conversations, whether you're sharing hardships, joy, or what have you. Or like another family member of mine likes to say all the time, whatnot. The fact is that if you share news with them and it just kind of fizzles out right then, that's the same as going over like a lead balloon. Your news lands like a brick. It's not picked up, it's not carried, it's not even acknowledged. That's the second sign that your family is just tolerating you and doesn't really want you around. The third sign that your family is tolerating you but doesn't really want you around is that plans will happen around you, but they'll never include you. And so what does that mean? Well, like I said, I just talked with a close relative just a couple of days ago, and during the conversation they were talking about how far they had to go to have a lunch gathering with some of the other people in the family. And I just simply replied, especially because I've been feeling pretty down right now, I simply replied, hey, at least you got invited to this family get-together. I haven't really been feeling all that well because of this thing that we're going through. And it would have been uplifting to have been with family, to at least have some kind of other conversation, even if it was just a distraction. But for whatever reason, again, as usual, even though I've frequently mentioned, especially with the persons that they were going to visit with, I frequently mentioned, hey, I would love to see so-and-so. I would love to hang out with so-and-so. I would love to have the chance to talk with so-and-so, especially when there are other people present, because then basically we could all have a cohesive, coherent conversation. But for whatever reason, I was not included, and me saying that caused that conversation to become, I would call it agitated. I don't know how else to call it. I'm not going to edit this video other than piece together the segments that are talking about these things. I'm about to go on a run today, and I've got so many other things going on, but for whatever reason, again, no matter what I do, the health that's been sent my way hasn't really been health. It's been basically gossip and what someone like Denzo on the Denzo Most channel would call monitoring spirits. It seems like the only thing anyone ever wants is to hear what it is that I'm doing, what I'm going through, and to take those hardships and try to use those as conversational bait for whatever they're doing. And so, in other words, gossiping. And so I know that me saying these things doesn't make it pleasant or easy for some of my family members to come around and acknowledge what's going on. But the fact is that finding myself being left out of these group get-togethers is indicative of the fact that I am not the sheep in the family. Some people will call it a black sheep, the one that's disavowed, but that's still a sheep. And so no matter what the color is, the fact is that you're either a sheep or you're not a sheep. And if you're not a sheep, you're generally not going to be included along with the rest of the herd. The fourth sign that you're being tolerated by family and or friends, but not really welcomed by them, is that nobody will notice when you disappear. And so what does that mean? Well, like I said, the other day I had a conversation with someone. It turned into something where I mentioned what was on my heart, and they basically disavowed it. And so we haven't had a conversation since that point in time. The last time something like this happened, we went over 4 months, 5 months without talking. You can review all the video history to figure out what you want to figure out, if you need to figure out anything as far as who's talking to who and all this and that and the other. But the fact is that those months went by, and those months accumulated into time that we did not spend together. And I just basically disappeared. And I disappeared not because I was trying to hide myself. In fact, during that time frame, I still acknowledged their festivities. I still acknowledged their dates of celebration. I still left gifts. I still recognized the holidays that we were going through. I still participated, but for whatever reason, I was still invisible. And so when you're participating and trying, well, sometimes you might make it back into those conversations with what Denzo would call the narcissistic family, the nest of narcissists, or whatever you want to call it. You can watch Supernatural and shows like that and see that that's how things work in colonies, groups of people that don't appreciate the truth. And if you speak the truth, a lot of times you're not welcomed because people do not like to have accountability. And when they don't like to have accountability, they don't mind not thinking about you. And if they're not thinking about you, well, when you disappear, they're not going to notice. And parts of those reasons are that, again, they don't want to acknowledge certain things, truth, and when they don't want to acknowledge truth, that leads to trying not to think about someone. And if you get to a stage like my father, if you watch that whole hour-long plus conversation that I had with him, which I probably will link to in this video, you'll see that there were topics that he kept kind of getting confused. He couldn't remember from point A to point B. There's a great movie called Inside Out. It's an animated movie. I believe it's Disney or Pixar. I'm not sure what it is. Whatever it is, it goes through an element of people who have trauma, how they disassociate all memories associated with something that they think is traumatic. And if you yourself tell the truth enough, and if the narcissist thinks that you're causing them trauma, they're going to start contorting some of their own views about you. And when they twist those views that they had about you into something that's not true, oftentimes what'll happen is they'll pretend that they never had that conversation. And they'll pretend possibly sometimes for years, like in the case of my father, and they'll express tendencies that seem almost like dementia, where they can't quite remember what they're talking about on this side of the coin if they're talking about this other side of the coin. Because those two narratives are not, they don't equate, they don't align. The fifth sign that your family members tolerate you but don't really want you around is that there are strangers who simply share your DNA. What that means is, for an example, if you can't say something that, if you can't think of something that brings your family members joy, or vice versa, if they have no clue what brings you joy, you're strangers. If you have no idea what your points of contention are, what your hurdles are for your loved ones, and vice versa, if they don't really know what's going on with you, aside from what you share, because they're monitoring you, then really there's not a whole lot that's going on. They're just strangers. It's like, for an example, I've shared things on this channel. I've said a whole lot of words, and those words sometimes are condensed into just moments, sometimes into minutes, sometimes into half hour, sometimes into greater than an hour. And in all of those cases, I'll say what's going on. And concurrently, there will be people who will respond and say something just absolutely crass. They won't even acknowledge what's going on. If you say, man, I'm having a hardship right now, I'm going through these times. I used to have a friend, and that friend, he was having a hardship where basically he was involved in some kind of litigation where someone was trying to take away his dwelling. And during that time frame, I prayed for him to keep his dwelling, and I talked with him about it all the time, acknowledging it. And then one time my dad went so far as to burn down his parents' house and almost take his own life. And then basically at some point, even though I told my friend this story, my friend said, because I told him again one day, I was like, remember when my dad burned down his house? And I'm paraphrasing and I'm going in a tangent, but the fact is, I said a fact about what happened. And my friend said, what? I thought it just burned down. I didn't think he set it on fire. Well, the fact is that I had said that several times. I've posted and shared several videos. I've made a bunch of songs about it. And essentially the person I was talking to was a stranger who couldn't care less what was going on. A lot of my family is like that right now. So if you're a non-sheep, you probably have circumstances very similar to what I'm describing, where basically you're seeming to talk with someone who's not really genuinely interested. They're disingenuous in their relationship. That's the fifth sign that someone's tolerating you but doesn't want you around, is that they're more like strangers than people who share your DNA. The sixth sign that people are just tolerating you but don't really care if you're around, probably don't want you around, is that if you go and have any kind of physical connection with someone, like for an example, you go in for an embrace, the hugs feel more like handshakes than an actual embrace. You ever get that just the pat on the back? You don't have a genuine hug. Have you ever seen animals interact with one another? I get a lot more love from the kittens that are in the house right now, and we got a whole lot more love from the dog that we recently lost. And that has been heart-wrenching for us to both lose the compassion of a companion who's been with us for a long time, to lose a family member who's been with us for basically 14 years, and to not have anyone acknowledge that's been heart-wrenching. And so when you have a family member that hugs you, but it's more like a handshake than an actual hug, sometimes that's a clear indicator that people really don't want you around, but they tolerate you in those circumstances. So hugs feeling like handshakes are sign number 6, that people tolerate you, but don't really want you around. The 7th sign that people are tolerating you, but don't really want you around, is that everyone's watching the clock. So if you really pay attention to people, especially when you get together, let's say for an example, you're getting together at those routine instances where you have meals together. When people are actively asking for the receipt, the check, so that they can pay it. In fact, when they get ahead of themselves so much that they say, hey, I need a pen to sign the receipt, even though they haven't even been given the opportunity to present their credit card so that the staff can take the receipt and charge the card and bring you back a payment slip to sign. When people are that ahead of trying to get out of the circumstance because they're clock watching, you start to recognize that some people really genuinely do not care to be where you're at. You can also tell when you're having a conversation. And in my household, we got together with one of the relatives that I've been talking about here. we had lunch with them recently. And in my household, the person who was with me was talking to these relatives of mine, and they started, the people that they were talking to started talking to themselves about the check, and also about other things completely different from whatever the conversation was that was being had at that moment. So the person who was with me had to stop, and they waited until eventually one of the individuals who they were talking with refocused their attention and started to pay attention to whatever was being talked about. Those kind of things, those kind of slights, those kind of that kind of being disregarded is something that doesn't happen when you have a genuine relationship, when you have a genuine bond. And so for us, for an example, we had a dog for 14 years, and he always paid attention to us. Even on his last day, he paid attention to us. And as of the time when this video is shared, this will have been 2 weeks since the last day that we spent with our best friend. And it'll also be many months, if not years, since we've gotten together with our actual family, with our people that share our DNA, but treat us like strangers. And the only reason that I'm sharing that here is because, again, if I share something and someone comes back with a question that has nothing to do with anything, or is very interested in some kind of review on shoes or something like that, then they're absolutely clueless, and they do nothing to bring joy to your day because they don't want to. Those are the kind of people that you have to let know, this is how I feel about that. You don't need to ghost someone in response, but you also don't need to be actively putting your time into talking with someone while you have the time. If you get an opportunity, or if they reach out to you, then be sure to complete the communication, complete the conversation. But if they're going to do something actively disruptive and destructive towards your genuine well-being and overall health, that's when you need to start putting the phone down. Go into airplane mode. Do something for your own health. So that's what I'm about to do right now. Hope that you guys are having a great day. I apologize for all of the audio quality issues that are happening possibly in this video. I had to film in a couple of different ways because it started getting warm in here, and I didn't plan to sit here for minutes trying to do this before I got my run in. Maybe I'll record a little bit more after my run, but either way, right now, I'm about to take on the responsibility of restoring my own health. For all my family out there who's ailing, I hope that you're doing things that have to do with restoring your health. And that health change starts inside. It starts inside. You have to have a desire to want something to change. And if you don't want something to change, you're going to be complicit, and you're going to keep doing the things that you're doing, going in the direction that you're going into. And sometimes that's not a very easy thing for someone who loves you to watch. And so that's why basically I've taken every opportunity I have to actively participate in the conversations that I believe are long overdue, especially in my family, comprised of strangers who happen to share my DNA. And oh, by the way, some of you who share relationships with us, maybe you don't even have the DNA you thought you had. Might want to start looking into your ancestry and figure out, are you part of this lineage? Are you part of this other lineage? Whatever lineage you're part of, you might want to figure out if you want to participate with some people who would rather tell the truth rather than participating with people that are just gossips and what some people would call witches and warlocks, or narcissistic, whatever the words are that anyone wants to call someone. The thing is, you either participate in truth or you're basically just upholding a lie. That's all there is to it. Well, I went 2.38 miles in 36 minutes. So not setting any speed records, but today was just a base run. And tomorrow is my tempo run. And then I think I have another base run, and then a rest day, and then a sprint day, and then, it pretty much never ends if you're constantly striving to improve. So in addition to what I've done to accomplish one specific task, I'm going to be furthering my efforts into body weight mastery. And if any of you are ailing out there, if any of you are injured, if you have any kind of injuries that you're trying to recover from, starting at the beginning of next year, maybe I'll begin sharing tips on how I restored my health. And in the meantime, I hope you enjoy the rest of the videos that are already uploaded for the rest of this year. As I've said before, I got pretty, let's just say that it wasn't uplifting to see the comments that I was seeing, or to not see the comments that I should have been seeing. And also, it just hasn't really been uplifting in general to use social media, even on this one platform, the only one that I pretty much have access to. But it's also been rewarding. It's helped me to learn a few things. There are other people out there just like me who have interests in things that are interesting, and who want to share information and who want to have conversation. But for those who are part of my supposed friends and family network who have not interacted with me at any level other than the topical level, well, I just wanted to put this series together to showcase that you had a choice to treat people like you would have wanted to be treated, to interact with people as if you wanted to be interacted with in a pleasant manner, to exclude someone from your family just because they're calling to attention a lot of things. Like, for an example, my father burned down the house that my grandparents gave to me, and then he sold the property to my, I don't even want to call him a relative. That's how I feel about that guy. Former mayor of a small town who was able to kidnap my dad from a rehab facility while he was in rehab, and then basically have my dad, who was diagnosed with having a drug-induced delusions, and B, who at times forgets things. He might or might not have dementia, but with all of that, he was also C, taken from a rehab facility, at which point he signed over ownership to something that was not rightfully his to sign away. But at the same time, whatever, you know, that's basically the kind of information that happens within families that are broken. And I've come up from a broken family and turned into whatever you see before you now. I hope that it's moderately interesting to you to go ahead and continue to type away comments that have nothing to do with anything. If it's not, hopefully you can restore the relationship that we used to have. But there was some confirmation that maybe that's going to be the case. But either way, it's been a journey, is basically all I'll say about this. Till next time. I took a ride with you. We saw the sky so blue. I saw your eyes see mine. Left all the world behind. Into the world we go. Into the great unknown. Into a time right then. And there's no thinking can win. You took a chance on me. You saw the friend I'd be. You saw my see yours right on the sandy shores.